Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to be trying out a new color corrector, which is one of my favorite things in makeup. I love color correctors and I love making videos on the new ones that are being released. And this is from Caliray. This is the Hideaway Color Corrector, and I am so excited to talk about this because I have not seen anyone reviewing this. I feel like color correctors are definitely one of those things that you don't see a ton of videos on. There are definitely videos out there, but not a ton of people on YouTube make dedicated videos on color correctors. But that's why you have me, and that's what we're going to be doing today. If you're new here, my name is Blair. I do all kinds of beauty content here on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I hope you'll stick around, subscribe, and let's just get into this correct. Okay, I applied a little bit of a skin tint foundation, and now let's get into this. So this is the Hideaway Brightening Under Eye Color Corrector by Caliray. This retails for $28 and it comes in 8 shades, which we'll just start off with the shade range. Props to Caliray for actually releasing a color corrector in more than 2 or 3 shades. So often we see color correcting products come out and they have 2 of them or 3 of them. You need more than that. You need more than that. So I was so impressed that they released 8 shades. Very, very impressive. So this is what the corrector looks like, and it's actually in a glass bottle, which is also nice. This is very heavy. Really, really nice. Just packaged really well. It's nice to look at. I'm very impressed overall with just the branding on this. But I got the shade Cool Sunrise. Now, as you'll see, this one is darker than my skin tone. I did that because I want to match the darkness under my eyes, not my skin tone. That's kind of how I apply color corrector. I like to find something that will actually correct under my eyes, and then I'll brighten later with concealer or whatever. But that's why I went with this shade. This shade in Cool Sunrise is described as a cool peach shade for medium skin. So I chose this shade because it's a cooler undertone, which is typically what I like for my under eyes. And it's about, I would say, the depth of my darkness under my eyes. So that's why I went with this shade. But there's also one called Warm Sunrise, which is a warmer shade with a peach undertone. But I went with this one because I liked the cool aspect of this undertone. I just feel like that would work the best for my under eyes. So this is what the shade looks like. So this is a very thin, fluid, liquidy formula. It's very hydrating, and I have tried this once already, but that is the shade Cool Sunrise. And as always, when I do these color corrector videos, I will give you comparisons to other color correctors towards the end with swatches that I own. In case you're wondering, I'll kind of give you my thoughts on this one as opposed to the other ones that I have. The packaging for this corrector does give a lot of claims. It says bright eyes in a bottle. This delivers instant radiance that awakens the under eyes with an all-day formula. It has peptides, hyaluronic acid with plumping skincare benefits and a blurred look. Color correcting magic. Buildable formula looks invisible but visibly conceals dark circles and creates a lifted effect. So a lot of claims here. I've seen on their Instagram, they're kind of marketing it as a color correcting concealer. So it's supposed to do everything. Now, based on the shade that I picked, this is going to be a bit darker than my skin. So depending on what shade you get will dictate whether or not it's like an all-in-one corrector and concealer. But for me, I would put a little bit of concealer with this. Let's just go into it. So this is what the applicator looks like. It's a doe foot, but it's kind of a smaller doe foot applicator, and it's slightly angled right here at the tip. But I actually think this is a great applicator for color corrector because you really want something smaller in terms of an applicator for a color corrector, especially under your eyes, because this is the type of product you don't you don't want to get it everywhere. You want to put it where you have the discoloration. So I like that the applicator is smaller. So we'll do my left eye first. This is typically my darker eye of the two. So I'm going to put some there. And I'm also going to put some in that inner corner because I also tend to get a little bit blue there. And I'm going to blend it in with a brush. This is the Smashbox Blurring Concealer brush. I really like this brush for corrector or concealer. But you can see how easily that formula blends in. It is very, very thin and very, very hydrating. So I would say right off the bat, if you have darkness under your eyes and you want something hydrating, maybe you have drier under eyes, or you find some under eye correctors can make you look even more dry under the eyes, this would be a good formula because this is one of the most hydrating formulas that I've tried. Okay, so there is one eye done. I would say it's on the lighter side of a medium coverage corrector. It's not a full-on medium, but it's more than a light coverage. It's definitely not a full coverage. So if you have a lot of darkness that you're trying to cover and you want a good bit of coverage, this is probably not going to be the one for you, but it's a beautiful formula. I just have to say, I knew pretty much from the first time I tried this. I've only tried it twice. This is my third time. But this is a beautiful formula. Beautiful. And like I said, we will compare to other things towards the end of the video. But I mean, I feel like it did a pretty good job with that little bit of product on this eye. This is my darker eye, like I said. So this one is dark, but not quite as dark as this one. But I feel like it did a pretty great job. And it's darker than my skin, but as you can see, once it's blended out, it's not that much darker than my skin. And I would say I'm a light skin tone. Definitely not a medium skin tone. This formula is a little bit more on the thin side, so it's a little bit more sheer. So I think when you blend it, that's why it just kind of blends into my skin. It's not super, super intensely pigmented, but I think it looks great personally. And when I've worn it the past 2 days, it wore beautifully underneath concealer. So I'm pretty impressed. I'm pretty impressed. Let's do the other eye. I was so excited to see a brand coming out with a new color corrector because we don't get them that often. And then when I saw there were 8 shades of this one, very, very impressed. Something I did want to point out about this formula, because it is pretty thin and lightweight, I would let it sit on your under eyes for at least like 30 seconds to a minute before you start blending it, because that will allow it to kind of warm up, get a little bit tackier, and you will get a little bit more of the pigment, a little bit more of the coverage if you do that. So this is definitely a formula where I would let it sit for a second before you blend it in. I mean, I think it looks really, really good. Really, really good. It's not a full coverage, but on a daily basis, I'm not really looking for full coverage anyway, so that doesn't bother me. But in terms of the finish and how it looks on my under eyes, I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Truly. I mean, I don't see anything that I don't like. So this is it after sitting for like 3 minutes. So it does dry down a little bit. It does remain a little bit, I wouldn't even call it dewy. I would say it just has a very hydrated look to it, but it doesn't look super, super glowy. But I'm really impressed with this so far. Let's add some concealer so you can see it with a little concealer over the top. I'm gonna use my favorite, which is Natasha Denona, and I'm gonna use the shade RN3. The thing about color corrector is if you apply a shade that works for your under eyes based on whatever discoloration you have, then you should be able to apply less concealer, which is amazing because as we know, as we age, the more product you apply under your eyes, sometimes the worse it looks, is just the truth of it. So we want to apply as little as possible, but we also want to get the result that we're looking for. So that's why I love color corrector so much, because I truly believe it is highly underrated, because to me it's more important than concealer. But there it is on that eye with the corrector underneath. I don't know. I'm very impressed by this. I did not expect to be super impressed by this. I actually haven't tried anything from Caliray except their primer, the collagen blurring primer, which I was not a fan of at all. It was too mattifying for me, but I haven't tried anything else from Caliray. And I believe, I could be wrong on this, so don't quote me, but I think Caliray was started by one of the founders of Urban Decay. I think that's right. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's correct. But I'm very impressed with this. I feel like it's such a random launch. I wouldn't expect this brand of all brands to launch a color corrector in 8 shades, but I'm here for it. All right, so there is concealer on both eyes. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I personally really like it. I think this is a perfect everyday under eye corrector, especially if you have a drier under eye. I think you're really gonna like this. It is not a full coverage, and it has pigment, but it's not as pigmented as some of the other color correctors that we'll talk about in a little bit, but I love it. I think it's really, really impressing me so far. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up the rest of my makeup, and then I'll come back, we'll kind of wrap up the video. I'll give you kind of my final thoughts, and then we'll do some comparisons. So we can compare the Huda, the Exa, Natasha Denona, Clinique, all the ones that I have. So I'm going to finish my makeup and I'll be back. I did the rest of my makeup. I just did a really, really light everyday makeup today, but I want to show you my under eyes because I did not powder them. So I did powder the rest of my face, but I did not powder under my eyes, and there is like little to no creasing. I mean, they look phenomenal. They look phenomenal. I mean, we do have the Natasha concealer on over the top, so it's not just the corrector, but it performs well with concealer over the top, which is key. Sometimes certain color correctors don't play well with concealer over the top. Some of them play well with some and not others. It just kind of depends, but this looks fantastic. And I try a lot of color correctors. I compare them a lot. This is like one of my main things that I do here on YouTube, and I think this looks absolutely flawless. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Now we're gonna do some comparisons. Like I said, I try a lot, I own a lot of color correctors, and I wanna at least swatch this one compared to some of the other ones that I have. I know a lot of you like to see comparisons to other formulas, so I wanna do that. So let me swatch this new one on my hand, and again, this is the shade Cool Sunrise, which looks like that. In my opinion, based on the other things that I've tried, the other things that I own, texture-wise, it really does remind me of this one. This is the Huda Beauty Faux Filter Corrector. Now, I have reviewed this in depth here on my channel. This is currently my favorite color corrector, and I want to compare these two. So I have the Huda corrector in 2 shades. I have Pink Pomelo and Cherry Blossom. So I will swatch both of those next to this one so you can see. But the texture really reminds me of this one for sure. Okay, so we have the Caliray in Cool Sunrise. This is Pink Pomelo from Huda Beauty, and this is Cherry Blossom. So Very big difference. These two are somewhat similar, Pink Pomelo and Cool Sunrise. Cherry Blossom is much more pink, as you can see, which works on me as well. It works for typically purple, blue, even a little bit of redness under the eyes if you have a light or fair skin tone. Sometimes something pink works really well. So I love Cherry Blossom, but I can also use Pink Pomelo. But as you saw, I can also use this one. I do think the Huda Beauty formula is slightly more pigmented. You have to be more careful with this one than you do with this. This just doesn't have as much pigment. The formula is similar, but the pigment is a little bit more sheer. So I would say this is a true medium here. This is closer to like a light medium. So depending on what you're looking for would kind of dictate which one you pick. So I like them both. I like them both. I have worn the Huda Beauty one much more, obviously, than I've worn this one. So I'm going to keep wearing it and I'll let you know if my opinion changes. But I would say, as of now, I like this as much as I like this. Now, this just gives a little bit more coverage. It's not anything crazy different, but I do think this one has just a little bit more pigment. But I would say the same thing about this that I would say about this. If you have a drier under eye, you want something thin and lightweight, don't like a cream. Creams feel too heavy. They look heavy under your eyes. I would say either of these would be a great formula. If you have more darkness, I would probably go with this one. If you have a little bit less, I would probably go with this one. Unless you don't care about the coverage, you care more about the formula, I don't think you could go wrong with either. So those are the Huda Beauty correctors. So again, Cool Sunrise, Pink Pomelo, and Cherry Blossom. I will say, I think Pink Pomelo is actually just a little bit deeper than Cool Sunrise up here. When I use Pink Pomelo, it is very, very apparent under my eyes, whereas this Cool Sunrise shade, definitely darker than my skin, but not quite as stark on my under eyes as Pink Pomelo. So if that helps you. Another one that I have that I love is the Exa High Fidelity Color Corrector. I have this one in pink and peach. Now, pink is a very, very light color, as you'll see in the swatch. This one I do not wear on its own because it's too light. My darkness shows right through if I use this by itself, but I do often mix it with peach, and that works really well for me too. I did notice that this new Caliray formula, they do have a pink shade that I will actually look up the name of it, that looks almost identical to this Exa shade in the pink color. Yes, so Dawn in the Caliray formula looks like the pink in Exa. So this one here is Exa in pink, and that is Exa in peach. The Exa formula is thicker, and it has, again, a good bit more pigment. I would say even more than the Huda one. So this is going to be a little bit more heavy duty. It's not as fluid and sheer. It packs much more of a punch in terms of the pigment, but I love it when I mix these two together. So there is Exa. I would not say the Exa is, or it's definitely not as hydrating as the Huda Beauty or the Caliray. Not even close. It's a little, it's not drying because it is a liquid formula, so it's not drying. It's not as thick as like a cream corrector, but it's definitely not as hydrating as the other two. I also have the Natasha Denona corrector, and I get asked about this one a lot. This is the shade C1, so this is the lightest shade. I don't use this one a lot, and a lot of people ask me why, because I love the Hy-Glam concealer. I don't use the corrector as much for two reasons. I don't love the color. So this is C1 right here. So you can see the Natasha shade has a lot more yellow in it. I don't like something yellow under my eyes. I never have. I like something more pink or peach, something just cooler in tone typically. So that is one reason why I don't like the Natasha Denona as much. The other reason is that Believe it or not, this formula does not play well with a lot of concealers on top. Even its own concealer, the Natasha Denona Hy-Glam Concealer, I find I don't like it on top of this. I can't explain that because I assume they are the same formula, just a different color. But I don't know. I don't like this layered with most things, especially the Natasha Denona Concealer, which is odd. And I don't love the shade. I just don't love that yellow undertone on me personally under my eyes, but I did want to show it. This does have a lot of pigment. This is much more pigmented than the Huda or the Caliray. I would probably compare it the most to the Exa one, but I do think the Exa formula is a little bit thicker. This is a little more fluid, but it has more pigment than Huda and Caliray. Then I have Tarte Shape Tape Corrector in Peach. This is a pretty liquidy formula. It's very pigmented. But the formula kind of reminds me of the Caliray, but this one has more pigment, more similar to Huda Beauty, I guess. I don't use the Tarte one much because I'm not a huge fan of the shade. It's not terrible, but it's not my favorite. So this is Tarte in the shade Peach. I would say most similar to Huda Beauty. But I don't know, something about this peach in the Tarte one, it's a little bit too orange. It's more apparent under my eyes. It's kind of hard to tell in just the swatch alone, but I don't know, something about the undertone of the Tarte one is not my favorite. That's why I don't use it a lot. I mainly just keep it for comparison purposes so I can like show it. But I don't know, it's not my favorite. And it has a lot of pigment, so when I use it, I have to use it very sparingly. Otherwise, I have to apply a lot of concealer to cover it up, and it's just kind of a mess. So that is not my favorite, but the consistency, similar to Caliray, but that one has a lot more pigment. And then the other one I have here is Trish McEvoy, the Under Eye Brightener. Now this one, I would say kind of a similar coverage level to the Caliray, but this one only comes in 3 shades, which is what I was talking about earlier. It's why I was so impressed that they came out with 8 shades, because typically we don't see that with color correctors. So this here is the Trish McEvoy in the shade number 1. So it's probably the most similar to the Exa in pink, but it's still pretty different. It has a different undertone. It's more peach. So the Trish McEvoy, as you can see, is brighter than most of these other ones. It's not quite as bright as the Exa in pink, but it is a brighter color. So I would get more brightness from a shade like this, obviously, than I would get from a shade like this. So color correction is really more about the shade. In my opinion, the shade is way more important than the formula itself. Obviously, you want to find a formula that works the best for your under eyes, but the shade is very, very important, and it's going to depend on your under eyes, your discoloration, what you're trying to achieve. So everybody is different. It's not a one size fits all, which is why I was so happy to see them come out with 8 shades. That's what we need. We need more shades in color correctors. I do have one more that I want to show you that I don't have out here, so let me go grab it. Another one that I do own that I like is this Neutrogena one. And this is also a liquid. This only comes in 2 shades though. It comes in this one, which is peach, and then it comes in one, I think it's called apricot. But this formula kind of reminds me, honestly, of the Caliray, but again, you don't get the shade range, which is unfortunate. But it's a liquid, it's a pretty thin, lightweight formula, so that is Neutrogena there. Probably, actually it's pretty similar to Cool Sunrise there, or even the peach in the Exa shade there. So I use that one quite a bit. I've had it for quite a while. Again, it's not a ton of coverage, but it does a pretty good job of neutralizing darkness. It's thinner and it's a little bit more hydrating. And then the last one we'll end with is Bobbi Brown. Now this is a cream, so this is not a liquid. So this is a totally different texture. but I will swatch it because this shade works well for me. This is the shade Bisque, and I love this corrector. This is also a great one. It's just a different formula. So that is Bisque right there. So it has a peachiness to it, but it's not quite as peach as a lot of these. So this is one that I can actually get away with wearing by itself. I will say that this, even though it is a cream formula, it's not a thick or a drying formula. Now there's a few other correctors like the original Bobbi Brown corrector in the little pot. That one is pretty thick. I wouldn't say it's hydrating, so I would not recommend that for dry under eyes or more mature under eyes, typically because it's a pretty thick product. You have to apply that really, really sparingly. This is similar, but it's a thinner texture and it's more hydrating. So I would probably go with this between the two, depending on what you're looking for. Again, everybody's looking for something different, so it's hard for me to recommend something that will work for everybody because everybody is so different. But I hope maybe these shades are helpful. I do have in the next month or so another color correction video coming out where I'll talk about all the formulas that I own, even the ones that I'm not showing that are just a totally different texture. But I hope those swatches were helpful for you. Let's look at my under eyes. Again, I have not touched them. So no powder, no nothing. And I just feel like this corrector is gonna be, this is gonna be a new favorite for me. All right, you guys, that is everything for today. I have worn this corrector twice already, so this will be my third time. The other 2 times I wore it, the wear was great. My concealer wore great. I had no issues. So far, I have nothing bad to say about this corrector at all. I think it's really good and I'm really excited about it. I'm happy to have another corrector to recommend depending on what you're looking for. And something else to just keep in mind is color correctors are often trial and error. You have to try things to really figure out what works the best for your under eyes. Under eyes, like all of us, we are not the same. Everyone's under eyes are different. The texture, the color, some people have hollowness, some people have puffiness, some people have bags, some people just have discoloration. There's so many different things. They really are very individual to the person. So sometimes you just have to try things out, see what works for you. And I hope, as always, these videos are helpful for you. Make sure to leave a comment below. Let me know if you're going to try this one. If you have tried it, I have not seen any other video reviews on it, so hopefully this is helpful. I know a lot of people have been asking me about this one, if I was going to review it, so I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. You can also feel free to DM me on Instagram at simply.blair, and then I'm also on TikTok at simply.blair1. I will have this corrector linked below for you, as well as some of the other ones and everything else that I have on my face today. I do use affiliate links that support my channel when you shop through them. I hope you'll subscribe if you have not already. I love doing color correcting videos. I have more to come. And thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Remember, simply be you. Bye.